It's midday right here in Lagos, Nigeria. Welcome to Lunchtime Politics. We bring you up to speed with the big happenings in the polity and in politics. Let's begin with the headlines. Senate debunks report on social media that new states have been created, maintains that constitutional amendment process still ongoing. Its rigorous path approves federal government's planned borrowing. Suspended senator from Kogi Central, Natasha Duha, insists on her right to resume to seek judicial interpretation in the appellate court. Thanks again for coming on the program. And let's begin with what appears to be an unending drama as far as the resumption of Natasha Duha, the senator that represents Kogi Central, is concerned. And she says she is going to resume at the Senate yesterday. Yes, indeed, she showed up, but her vehicle was not granted entry. But she walked with a couple of people and was denied entrance. The Senate has actually responded to all of this in a conversation. But let's take a listen to what she said during that, movement, attempted entry into the National Assembly.
That outburst I had on the floor was just a compilation of so many wrongs that Akpabio has meted against me. And I will say this, pretty much it's a shame that we have had so many good Senate presidents. We've had Chuba Akpadibo of blessed memory. We've had Senator David Mark. We've had Bukola Saraki. We've even had Ahmed Lawal, who is a senator right now. And I'd say this pretty much is the worst assembly Nigeria has ever had. And I hope we will not have to suffer this anymore, because it tells a lot on the individual. And I've said this before and I'm saying it again. The Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, runs the Nigerian Senate as if it's the third-term governor of Akwa Ibom. Many senators are afraid. You've all seen what happened. You are not allowed to speak. When you try to speak or air your views on certain issues that are critical, you get shut down if it does not conform with what he wants. Going forward, I'm going to have a meeting with my legal team, and then most likely they will have to probably proceed to the appellate court to seek interpretations of what has just happened, because we are law-abiding citizens. Everyone here who has accompanied me, you can see no one is unruly, even though some have vehemently decided to express their dissatisfaction with the system. I am a law-abiding citizen, and it is very important I do mention, and Nigerians should know, that even though we do have 2 federal government criminal cases against me, they are on criminal defamation, simply because I spoke up on the threat to life. And everybody has a right to speak up on their threat to life. By and large, considering the fact that the Senate is vacating tomorrow, whenever they deem it fit to resume, we would resume as well. So what matters most is all the pressures and all the calls of me apologizing for no wrong that I did. I have refused to do that. So if it means staying the entire 6 months for an unjust suspension, which I'm saying, repeating again, has been quashed by the courts, so be it.
Well, while she was saying that right there outside the premises of the National Assembly, things were going on. But we will get to what was said in the House of Representatives. She's a senator, but a gentleman called Clement Jimbo from Abak-Etimekpo, Ika Federal Constituency in Akwa Ibom, made a comment on the floor of the House of Representatives on the issue of multiple interpretation to the same court judgment and what something has to be done. And the Deputy Speaker of the House actually refer that matter or motion to the appropriate committee. Let's take a listen to Clement Jimbo.
On Senator Natasha Duha.
With the events that, should I say, that is about to happen today in the National Assembly, where a judgment of a court gives judgment that is subject to different interpretation by the parties, where the litigant says the judgment of the court says this, and the plaintiff says the judgment of the court says this. It is conflicting. And as members of parliament, Mr. Speaker, I think it is important for us to advise our judiciary that judgment of court should be simple, with clear explanation and simple English, devoid of any ambiguity.
This issue should come by way of motion.
Yes.
And then we'll refer it appropriately to the committee with the mandate to look at those judiciary-related issues.
And I think it's a welcome development by all standards, because we've seen judgments of courts. We can clearly see it written in English, but the people who understand laws, the lawyers, sometimes seem to have divergent interpretation to the same piece of document, whether it's an enrolled order of court or the full CTC of the judgment that carries the reasoning of the judge to the point where the judge either makes a consequential order or not. So this is perhaps a very good welcome development. We don't know what has to be done to make judgments as clear as crystal. Okay, but let's tell you what also played out in the Senate. The Senate had their session while all of that was playing out. A couple of things were raised on the floor of the Senate, which included the issue of whether or not some people were circulating information on the social media that the Senate had approved a couple of states in the agitation for state creation. Well, the Senator said they have not done any of such thing. Also, the borrowing plans by the federal government, as proposed by the Tinubu-led administration, has also been approved.
Fresh from a one-week break, lawmakers returned to legislative duties, but not oblivious to the chaotic scenes that played out outside the gates of the National Assembly. Inside the chamber, where the President of the Senate presides over plenary, the contrast between the serenity within and the commotion outside is palpable. But proceedings progress uninterrupted, with no comment on the matter. The Senate leader begins with an announcement.
I want to inform that by the grace of God, tomorrow, Wednesday, this Senate will be taking a special motion as well to honor the late President Muhammadu Buhari. And distinguished colleagues will also have a chance to make contributions in that regard.
The President of the Senate then clarifies recent concerns on social media over the creation of additional states following a personal explanation raised by Senator Abdul Ningi.
The main committee is yet to even received nor evaluate any report.
There are proposals for state creation, well over 42 or so, but not one has reached a stage where we can even say we have finished zonal deliberations or even finished national deliberation and then transmitted to state houses. The processes of making amendments or alterations to the Nigerian Constitution are very laborious and very stringent. So please, the public should be aware, as raised by Senator Ningi, that no state has been created by this august assembly.
The Senate also considered and approved the 2025-2026 external borrowing plan of $21.5 billion presented by President Bola Tinubu for consideration after the submission of a report.
The committee, in this detailed report, identify ministries by ministry, agencies by agents of the government that is taking what in this borrowing plan document that we have. Mr. President, on that note, we can say that the budget 2025 implementation can now commence in full. Mr. President, this needs specification. How much goes to in each?
Meanwhile, for the fourth consecutive time, the Senate has summoned the Group Chief Executive Officer of NNPC Limited, Mr. Bayo Ojulari, to appear before its Public Accounts Committee over alleged financial infractions amounting to 210 trillion naira. And this latest absence has prompted fresh concerns among lawmakers as they prepare to go on recess on Wednesday, vowing to invoke all legal powers available before it to compel his appearance. From the National Assembly, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
The United States visa restriction during duration and validity of immigrant visas, which affects Nigeria, has caught the attention of the House of Representatives. Following a motion by Honorable Mukhtar Mohammed, the House is worried that the decision was taken without consultation and consideration of the relationship between both countries. The House is further urging the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to engage with the U.S. authorities to revise the decision.
You are welcome to the Parliament.
The Green Chamber is almost empty as lawmakers resume plenary for the first session of the week. Plenary commences with a moment of silence for the late former President Muhammadu Buhari. A defection is then recorded as Representative Mark Essiet from Akwa Ibom State joins the majority All Progressives Congress.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Motions of urgent national importance are received, one of which draws attention to the recent visa restrictions by the United States of America on African countries, including Nigeria.
Condemned in strong terms the decision by the United States government to downgrade Nigeria visa status without due consideration of the historical, strategic, and people-centric ties between both nations. Urge the United States Embassy in Nigeria and the United States Department of State to rescind the new visa policy decision and restore 5-year multiple entry visa regime previously granted to Nigerian citizens.
The motion is adopted, and another motion of urgent national importance on the need to resolve the crisis affecting dentistry students at the University of Calabar is taken and adopted.
The House resolves as follows. 1. To call on University of Calabar to immediately halt the punitive measures affecting students and work collaboratively with stakeholders to implement equitable remedial solutions such as phased induction plans, catch-up models, or facilitated transfers to accredited faculties.
A point of order on personal explanation is raised by another lawmaker, bordering on confusing court judgments and citing the court judgment on Senator Natasha Duha.
With the events that, should I say, that is about to happen today in the National Assembly, where a judgment of a court gives judgment that is subject to different interpretation by the parties, where the litigant says the judgment of the court says this, and the plaintiff says the judgment of the court says this. It is conflicting. And as members of parliament, Mr. Speaker, I think it is important for us to advise our judiciary that judgment of court should be simple, with clear explanation and simple English, devoid of any ambiguity.
This issue should come by way of motion.
Yes.
And then we'll refer it appropriately to the committee with the mandate to look at those judiciary-related issues.
To wrap up the day, the House passes the 1.485 trillion naira budget of Rivers State, which was passed 4 weeks ago by the Senate. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Thank you so much for coming on the program. There are so many layers to unpack. Because of time, I'll go straight to the reason why we invited you, because I wanted you to binge through some of the highlights of what we've done so far, one of which was this multiple interpretation to the same court judgment that is causing confusion sometimes among litigants. But let's talk about the agitation for state creation, which is one of the biggest highlights as far as the process of amending our constitution is concerned. There are two arguments to this issue, and I don't know what your take is. On one hand, some set of people within different localities across the country, we understand over 40 people want their own state. And if you listen to them, it's based on the fact of maybe marginalization, exclusion, the list is endless. But on the other hand, when we also look at the already existing 36 states, we see that there is a fiscal strain. In fact, we know federal allocation is for all the federation. But if we take our FAC, for whatever reason it is, some of these states will go belly up. So what do you make of the call or constant call for state creation amongst nationalities across the country who are insisting that that is the best way for their voices to be heard. Before, can I talk about the new constitution?
Okay, thank you very much for having me. Good morning. Yeah, I think the issues of state creation is at the bottom of our own complex dissatisfaction with the way the country is run. I think generally, if we think about the way the country is run, there is a huge dissatisfaction and frustration from many levels. And, people are looking for answers. People are looking for solutions. People think that part of the reason why the failure of the country lies largely in the kinds of people that lead them. But at the same time, in finding solutions, they think maybe by having more control of their own areas and their own environment will give them the kind of leadership and the kind of development they want. So this is a cry for real development. It's a country in crisis. Some people want to make it look like we are actually running a government. But I think some years ago, the American government did talk about state failure. Increasingly, I'm beginning to believe that what we have today in Nigeria is actually a serious decline in capacity of the state institutions, not the individuals, the state institutions as a whole to respond to the needs of the country. So there is a real issue there that people are saying to themselves that maybe if we get up and own our own spaces and control our own fortune and our own future, we'll be able to have a better answer. Clearly, of course, that is also one solution, and I don't think we should dismiss it. In the face of limited alternatives, I think this is something we must give some considerations to. Although the influx of demands have made it almost impossible to decide which way and which ones to get to deal with. Here that at the last count, we have 49 demands for state creation. This is a huge, it will have a huge upset on the general overhaul running of the country. In some cases, it's not just even a demand for states, it's a demand for more local governments. I think it's something we need to give some thought to and ask ourselves the question, what are people really saying when they demand for new states? They are saying they believe in the country as Nigeria. They are also saying that, but we want it to be governed in a way that makes us feel that our sense of partnership or involvement or inclusion is really addressed in a very strong manner.
So does this give credence to the call for a brand new constitution that perhaps may encapsulate this quote-unquote anomaly that is being canvassed around?
Well, let me start by saying that the issue of a new constitution is not a new demand. I think since the emergence of the 1999 constitution, we've seen progressively. I was part of the 2005 political conference, which President Obasanjo ran to look at the issues of the constitution as well. It's been I think we have been a country that has constantly been looking for a better union, for lack of a better word. You remember that we came together as Southern and Northern Protectorate back in time through the amalgamation, and then over time we have been looking at how we can keep our plurality and our diversity together. We've come up with constitutions that have allowed for some sort of decentralized power, a devolution of powers where the regions had been powerful and therefore the regions had been able to speak up. And then we came back with the military post-Civil War where the military tried to keep the country together. And now increasingly we have a presidential system that is extremely centralized. The question I am saying is that if you even look through this brief history that I have accounted for, these have been waves of changes which the country itself needs to go back to its foundation and ask the question, the document that defines who we are. I mean, and I think this is a very important point that needs to be made. The document and the grand norm that says this is who we are as a country, is it serving the ends of this country that is constantly in transition? And it is to that extent that some people argue that we need to tinker with what we have. But others say, look, fundamentally, we are facing a collapse as a country. And therefore, we need to rethink the entire basis of our this is not saying that Nigeria does not exist anymore. This is not saying that Nigeria's history and what has existed should be forgotten. It's a question about, if you have reached a point where what you have is not serving you, must you go on holding on to that which is not serving you? Or is it about time you deal with something new? And let me say something. It is not a hidden fact that the National Assembly, as we speak right now, has also been undertaking public hearings on the reform of the Constitution itself, which means the National Assembly as an institution, the legislature believes that there's something fundamentally wrong with the Constitution. The citizens under the Patriots and the Nigeria political subgroup came together again, highly esteemed members of the country, to say, look, the Constitution is fundamentally flawed. And then, of course, even the president himself, in one of his very first points of engagement was to say, look, we need to give autonomy to the local governments. We need to deal with state police. We need to think. So there's almost like some sort of agreement across board by all the mainstream political formations, whether they be in government or out of government, whether they be arms of the government or not, saying to us that, look, there's something fundamentally wrong. And this is the basis under which this arguments for a new constitution on the one hand, because the process of its birth, it's going to be different from what we currently have.
Yeah, madam, again, staying on the issue of how to make the country work better, it looks like up until someone becomes president, certain things become quite difficult. Why do you think it is difficult for successive leadership from Obasanjo now down to President Bola Tinubu, who some said are saying that he's doing pseudo restructuring, LG autonomy, for instance? Within that group, you have development commissions springing up across board, although that has gotten his own commendation and flags as well. Why do you think it's hard for leadership to bite the bullet of restructuring Nigeria, as a matter of fact, if that is fundamental to our development? If we have a pathway to progress, why are we avoiding it?
Very, very, very important question. And let me just say that we have been restructuring, but it's just that the kind of restructuring we have been engaging in hasn't led to the kind of outcomes we want. You have a critically sick country in need of a more surgical approach. And I think there's what Dr. Baba Ahmed wrote about Talking Nigeria, and he talks about what we call a damaging complacency. We need to push as a people. The leadership on its own will not get up and say, because this is there are many paths to what they want to attain. It is left for us to join with them and say, look, the paths that we have taken in the past are paths that have led us nowhere. We need to rethink the path that we need. And it's fundamental, because I think there's also an element of being uncomfortable with a new engagement. Look at what has happened with subsidy. That was a major policy move. The country has had its own jolts as a result of what has happened there. So people who come into leadership are more comfortable with tinkering around the edges than trying to engage with the major fundamental change. And I think what this moment suggests, and if indeed, like President Bola Tinubu has said of himself, that he is the man who has the guts to do it, I hope and believe that where he has started going, and even if you see some of the language of what this current assembly is working on, rethinking the whole question of the local governments, rethinking the question of autonomy for the judiciary and all of that. I think we're beginning to see some effort at that. But like I said, this is not substantial enough. And I think the fear of the unknown is usually what keeps us. And this complacency by the rest of us to allow things to continue the way. We cannot afford to do this anymore. I think we need to sit up and as a country and say, what does the future really mean for all of us?
Great point you've raised, Madam. I wish we had a lot more time because there's a lot to unpack with you. Quite a brilliant mind, Madam. But let's talk about the issue of you being an ambassador. And I said I must chip in this question. This government has been critical. I do not know whether it's cost-saving measure. Maybe you, from a diplomat's point of view, what do you think is really playing out? Why do you think the president is holding back on appointing high commissioners and ambassador? Look at what played out with the death of Muhammadu Buhari. If we had a high commissioner, perhaps things may have been faster. So what do you think is happening here, Madam?
Well, to be honest with you, I really would like you want to guess and wonder what's going on there. First of all, there was the recall of the ambassadors themselves, the ones that existed prior to the formation of this new government. So that gave the signal that this is something that was going to happen almost immediately. And for a president who wants to drive international foreign direct investment into the country, without ambassadors in place, without engagement, it's a contradiction in terms, and this is a denial of the optimization of what the country as a whole can do. And I continue to ask the question whether anybody in the last 2 years plus has felt the direction of our foreign policy, because if the foreign policy has been enunciated, usually it is the ambassadors out there that pick up the themes around what the enunciation is and begin to take them into the different component parts of the world to give expressions to it. I believe that what we have seen, I mean, in some ways also not too good for the president himself, given that there is quite a lot of negativity out there even against his person. He needs the public relations that the ambassadors would have brought to the country, as well as to his person and his office. So this is a total, what would I say, letdown, and it goes in some ways to suggest that the preparation for this first 4 years was a little bit not as well thought through as it should have been.
Madam, I would like to make him a promise to bring you back when we have the luxury of time. Technology was very unkind to both of us, but we still made it out of this. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you too very much for having me. Have a good day.
You too. And thank you for waking up. Yeah, I know it's still quite early. Nkoyo Toyo is a lawyer, former lawmaker, former ambassador, joining us on the program. That's it on the program. Thanks for your time and company. I'm Jeffrey Zonga. Bye-bye.